Welcome back to Champion News Talk Radio. We are brought to you by championnews.net, your choice for the conservative voice. This is Carol Parisi. Our founder, Jack Roser, and myself have the author and our dear friend, Bill Zettler, the author of the Illinois Pension Scam book. You can get this book on championnews.net or amazon.com. And it's full of information for the hardworking Illinois taxpayer. And before the break, Jack, you were talking about the teachers and their salaries and how they can spike their salaries.
I'll give you a truism. The administration of the K-12 school system, let me give you a generality, which if you go through a little time with what he's illustrated and listen a little bit to my 40 years of being a skunk at a picnic. I'm the guy they called the cockroach and the caviar of Barrington. I've been insulted for 40 years, so I got a bit of a thick skin because this is the worst run organization in the state of Illinois. There might be a small, tiny one somewhere that's worse, that's totally criminal. But in terms of something that's large, hugely large, big enough to destroy...
$30 billion a year, K-12. $30 billion. That's bigger than Caterpillar Tractor.
There isn't...
$30 billion a year with a B?
B with a B, yeah.
There isn't a company or a city or anything anywhere that's run as badly as a K-12 system. It is massively non-functional. That's what you've got with it. And how does it work at all? A generality I've found in my many years, 40 years of finding the inside of this rotten beast, is that half the teachers are saints working in a lousy system, and the other half have retired while still on the payroll. That's what you get when you get a lousy boss, like is what you have on the education system.
Can I make a statement on billion? I was listening to something this morning, and a million seconds is 12 days. A billion seconds is like 32 years. That's just for one. So when you start wrapping your mind around these numbers, because we throw these numbers around with our government, billions and trillions, you start losing the actual reality of the perspective of that.
Well, the average person doesn't deal with that on a daily basis.
Of course not. No. But we start hearing it, we become desensitized to these huge numbers. But I'm looking at some of your notes here, Bill, and we're looking, Illinois politicians of both parties continue to it's $95 billion, and it's even more than that. It's double that.
Right. Or
billion.
They're arguing over how to fund, how taxpayers are going to pay the $95 billion that's unfunded, because the teachers and the retirees and everybody in the pension systems do not pay 1 penny more because we're in the hole $95 billion. So all the arguments, if you read everything in the newspaper, it's always about, this is how we're going to deal with $95 billion. They haven't been able to do that yet.
But it's more than that.
The problem with that, exactly, it's at least twice that. Now let's look. Who says that? It's not Bill Zettler. Moody's. Moody's, who rates Illinois bonds, says that it's over $200 billion. That's what Moody's says. Government Accounting Standards Board. This is the one that tells the pension funds how to do their accounting. And starting in July of this year, the pensions in Illinois are going to have to use the new rules that it's called GASB, is going to use. That's at least $180 billion. So twice what they're talking about in February is going to come out in July. They need to talk about what Moody's and GASB are talking about, and not about what the unions are talking about. So
I guess who are we to trust, Moody's or the Illinois politicians?
Yeah, who would you trust?
Madigan's friends or Moody's?
Yeah, right. Exactly right.
But Bill, this is unsustainable. Are we going bankrupt as a state?
The $95 billion is unsustainable. $200 billion is Greece.
So
yes.
What are solutions?
The solutions are
we done?
The pensions have to be cut. Doesn't matter where it's constitutional. If there's no money, Here's a fact that most people don't know. The Constitution, the Constitution does not guarantee funding for the pensions. Does not guarantee funding. We do not have to fund the pensions.
Constitution of Illinois has one sentence that addresses the pensions, and it says you can't reduce them.
Right, but it doesn't say that you have to pay for them, strangely enough.
It doesn't say who has to pay for them.
Right, so the funding is questionable. That's why the unions right now, as part of every bill that goes in front of Quinn and the others and Madigan, says we want the funding guaranteed. Why do you think they're saying that? Because it's not guaranteed now. You can just not pay it.
If you look back and stand back and look at this from a historic perspective, you're going to see that in the 60s, the unions were pretty big. The UAW had 1.5 million. These were all private unions. But what was happening is the unions were costing jobs because the employers couldn't handle the price that the unions were setting.
That's in the private industry,
the private sector.
Competitive industry against other states and other countries.
Today
the unions got too expensive to continue the business. That's what happened to the automobile business.
Today they are at like 380,000 people. They've come way down. They've shrunk because the market
80%.
Right. So what they did is they started looking at the public sector. They see the public sector and us as taxpayers as someone who it's bottomless, unlimited funds. They don't think that they've even tapped into our funds yet.
But wasn't it Roosevelt who never wanted public sector unions?
Exactly. Roosevelt.
And Roosevelt was not a conservative by any stretch
King of the progressives.
Exactly. So if he had problems and saw public sector unions being problematic, why are the American people in Illinois, not speaking to that? I mean, if he saw a problem, and he's not even on a conservative scale close to a lot of the...
Because it's $1 million a year coming from the unions to Madigan and Cullerton, and...
it's all about power and politics.
$132 million a year. That's the statistics. The latest ones are from the year 2010. $132 million are taken from the hides of the teachers in Illinois every year. $132 million. The Beck decision says that 180% of that, roughly $100 million, the teachers shouldn't have to pay and should be returned to them, and that's at the Supreme Court level. It is the Beck decision. The highest law of the land says that the stinking teachers union, and I call them these rotten names because they are liars, and they are running the worst run thing in the whole country. It's our kids, it's our employees are all being treated badly because of this rotten union that has taken the money from the teachers and used that to acquire political power in the state of Illinois, which has corrupted, and I'm not accusing them of a felony, I'm not saying they're going to jail, but they have corrupted in the worst sense. The system that's teaching our children is one where they get out of the 3rd grade and they don't know discipline or arithmetic. And I'll tell you as an employer, because for over 50 years, 60, 70 years, I've been employing people and giving them a 6th grade arithmetic test, and I'll tell you that 3/4 of them can't do it. Can't do 6th grade arithmetic.
It's funny that we're talking about unions. I was on Facebook the other day, and this was obviously sent out by a union person, but it compared and contrast unions to private sector. And it started talking about how the unions is going to protect them, and if you have a problem in your private sector job, there's no one there to protect you. And I wish I had it. I might go grab my smartphone here during the break and read some of these things, but it just spoke to nanny state, nanny state, nanny state, that these people need somebody to be
This union has protected whom? They're supposed to teach the children, and especially in Chicago, they absolutely stink in what they are doing for the children that really need the help of the schools.
That's not their job.
Out here in the suburbs, we stink by any international standard. Parrington, where I live, expensive place. The North Shore has schools that spend twice the amount of money Chicago, which Chicago spends about $16,000 per child figure Bill developed, and Barrington much more. Some North Shore school systems spend $30,000 per child per year.
Well, here's
So they're spending all of this money, and we're getting a lousy result for it. As a businessman, how do I run a company where the people don't know how to communicate or don't have any basic knowledge?